What's the one part of yourself you're most afraid this world will see? For me, that part was something I hid for more than half a decade. See, only 3 years ago, I felt horribly disconnected. I still remember describing it as if I had walls up around me. Some of my friends would have described me as one of the most outgoing people they knew. Hell, I would have described myself as one of the most outgoing people I knew. And yet, surrounded by so many people, I never felt more misunderstood. On the surface, things seemed okay. But the truth was that I had been suppressing my sexuality for more than 5 years. For more than 5 years, I thought that a fundamental part of who I am, being gay, was fundamentally wrong, and that it made me unworthy of love. I felt deeply confused about who I was and what my future held for me. And so I decided that I needed a change. After graduating from high school, I decided to get outside of my comfort zone. I wanted to train myself to face the fear that I had inside of me, to open up my world and to confront the questions I had about who I was, who I wanted to become, and how I could get there. And so at 18 years of age, I booked one-way flights across the world all alone, stepping into these unfamiliar situations, not knowing that it would forever reshape my perspectives. That year was filled with incredible things I had never done before. I became a vegetable farmer in the countryside of Japan. I was an au pair in the Alps of France and spent the Christmas season with the family of a German friend I met online. I wrangled goats on the islands of Hawaii and in a small town in Morocco where horses walked down the street. I taught kids English. So that year I was up to a lot, solo traveling, volunteering, meeting strangers and staying at people's homes who I'd met for the first time when I landed in their country. But the story isn't just about travel. See, as fun and eye-opening as my travels were for me, the behind the scenes of my seemingly glamorous gap year is a deeply personal story of learning to face fear in the eyes and finding my way back to connection. Connection is something we all innately want. We're born wanting to be understood, wanting to be seen, and wanting to be loved. See, as social creatures, we as human beings are biologically designed to connect. But it's not something we all fully receive, let alone taught how to obtain. And so for a lot of that year, I was finding my way through the dark, looking for the signs that could lead me back to connection. Ironically enough, I stumbled upon a TED Talk that year that changed my life, and which makes this moment all the more surreal. Researcher Brené Brown studied shame and vulnerability, and in her 2011 talk, she revealed that vulnerability is the antidote to shame and the precursor to deep and meaningful connections. For so long in my life, I was running from my sexuality. I was ashamed. There were countless times when I tried to wish it away for a life where I wasn't born the way I was. So imagine how I felt when I found out researcher Brené Brown was telling me that I had to actually open up about this if I want to find myself back to true meaningful connection. And so I tried. And it wasn't easy at all. You see, the thing about vulnerability is that as humans, we don't like it because it leaves us open to being hurt. Physically, emotionally, it leaves us open to judgment and rejection. Shame tells us that if people see me for who I truly am, they might not accept me. But I learned that there was no other way. And so in the countryside of Japan, I met Ellen, an exchange student from London spending her time volunteering at the farm during her uni break. Ellen and I got along so well. We were somehow both late to everything, we would laugh at the same jokes for weeks, would cook together, bike through the countryside together, sing together. And on the day that I was leaving, Ellen began to tear up, making me tear up. We developed such a strong friendship. Yet in our teary goodbye, I still didn't dare to tell her what I'd been holding on to for so long. I was afraid that the very part I so hated about myself would push her away as well. But I knew that I had to give vulnerability a shot. And so it was only when I got home, I was lying on my bed, and as I sent her those texts, confessing the secret I had kept hidden for so long, my hands began to shake. My heart started to race, and I started to tear up once more. See, vulnerability feels terrifying because it asks us to be seen before we know that it's safe. Our hands might shake and our hearts might race as if we're handing something fragile to somebody else, trusting that they'll keep it safe. I know that feeling well because I lived it over and over. But here's the thing. As I dared to lean into vulnerability that year, I found that vulnerability truly was the precursor for deep and meaningful connection. As I dared to enter my own point of no return and step into the person I thought people would reject me for, I started to reconnect with those around me. And my life started to change. I felt as if a complex knot had finally been undone within me, and as if a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Vulnerability allowed me to show other people that I was struggling, and for other people to show me that they loved me, despite it all. My experience isn't unique. It reflects a universal wisdom that can be found across the world. Happiness shared is happiness doubled, but sorrow shared is sorrow halved. This life-changing transformation made me realize what a powerful grip our relationships have on us. And so, driven by this deep fascination for what truly connects us, I started my studies in psychology here at the University of Sydney. What I've learned so far has only confirmed what we as humans intuitively feel, and what I felt when I first embarked on my journey 3 years ago. That as human beings, we need deep, meaningful connection. Not as a luxury, but as a lifeline. What surprised me, however, was how few people truly grasp just how powerful, how vital connection truly is. So tonight, I want to take us on a little journey into the quiet, often overlooked science of human connection. The force that shapes who we are, how we heal, and how we live. In our brain, there is a constant tug of war going on between two neurochemicals, oxytocin and CRH, which stands for corticotropin-releasing hormone. Oxytocin is the chemical of love and connection. It makes us feel good, and it's released when we do things conducive to a healthy relationship. Expressing gratitude, deep conversations, physical touch, helping one another. CRH, on the other hand, is the body's primary trigger of the stress response. See, when CRH pulls harder than oxytocin, our stress system activates, releasing cortisol, the body's stress hormone. Now, as many of you may know, stress is a killer. But evolutionarily, cortisol's job was to keep us alive. It diverts energy and resources towards immediate survival by heightening our attention and fueling our muscles. But it comes with a trade-off. See, in order to do what cortisol does, it expresses non-essential systems in our body, like digestion, reproduction, and most importantly, immune repair. This is why under chronic stress, wounds heal slower. Inflammation lingers in our body, and we become more susceptible to illness and infection. In fact, research shows that chronic stress strains just about every system in our body, increasing the risk of cardiovascular, mental, autoimmune, and neurodegenerative diseases. But here's where connection steps in. Because when oxytocin pulls harder than CRH, our stress system doesn't activate, and the release of cortisol is directly inhibited. In other words, we are wired for strong, meaningful connections to protect us and keep us healthy at a neurobiological level. This explains why when you're feeling stressed out, sharing a laugh with a friend or talking about it with someone who truly cares for you can make you feel so much better. We are wired for connection. And if that's not enough for you, this neurobiological evidence is backed up by the longest running study of happiness in the modern day, called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. This study has been tracking the lives of thousands of adults since its conception in 1938. For over 80 years, this study has been running. And its core finding? That beyond wealth, beyond intelligence, beyond genetics, beyond status, and beyond our achievements, the quality of our relationships is the strongest predictor of our long-term health and happiness. I'll repeat that one more time. The quality of our relationships is the strongest predictor of our long-term health and happiness. Now, when you put this information into context, connection isn't just important. It's essential. See, in the digital era where the way we connect with each other has fundamentally shifted, 42% of young Australians report feeling lonely. That's almost half of us in this very room. And in 2023, US Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy went so far as to call loneliness a public health epidemic. Because loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally, it hurts physically. Research shows that socially isolated individuals have a 30% increased risk of dying prematurely from any cause. Any cause. And the negative health implications of chronic loneliness have been compared to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Beyond the statistics, however, loneliness seeps deeper. It sees anxiety, depression, and the quiet belief that maybe who we are isn't enough. That's how I felt for over half a decade. Back when I first embarked on my journey around the world to come to terms with who I am and broaden my perspectives, I didn't realize that connection would be the answer to my problems. But standing here today, shaped by my experiences, I have a dream. A dream where children around this country and around the world grow up understanding the value of connection unlike how I never did. A dream where vulnerability isn't seen as weakness, but as important and necessary. A dream where authenticity is revered and courage is championed. A dream where connection is no longer just an ideal, but the way that we live. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I urge all of you to embrace the power of connection, whatever that might take. I urge you not to find, but to make time for those that matter to you. To call on your courage in the face of rejection and say a simple hello to somebody new. I urge you to cultivate the belief that you are worthy of healthy and meaningful connection and nothing less. I urge you to text people when you miss them and tell people just how much they mean to you. I urge you to listen well and deeply to one another and lean into connection as if your lives depended on it. Because the evidence suggests that it just might. If you had told me, back when I was a scared 13-year-old boy, that one day I'd be standing here, sharing this message and sharing my story, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's what connection does. It brings us home to ourselves. Thank you.